Welcome to the Pursuit podcast, where we talk about all things innovative in the legal and legal tech space. My name is Chris Albrecht, and I am your host, and I am super thrilled to be chatting today with Jordan Weinstein, my colleague, and he is the Vice President of Data and Growth here at Pursuit. First thing I'm going to do is say hello, Jordan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about some FinServ data, some original, basically it boils down to some original data that you've pulled together using the Pursuit platform.
Yep.
We're going to dive into sort of FinServ stuff and AFAs and some interesting trends that you've noticed. But before that, if I were to talk to you at a party, what would be your conversation starter?
I don't know if I'm going to remember this one from my recent firm's newsletter. What was it? Oh yeah. Have you finished your rate negotiations this year? Something like that.
Actually, you go, what's the going rate for a
Oh yeah.
deposition in Ohio? We're talking, of course, about a piece that you recently wrote that we put together on the Pursuit newsletter. You should subscribe, visit pursuit.com to do that, so you get all kinds of great information. But basically, the point you were making was the old was, what's your lawyer rate increase, and now the new is more around sort of AFAs. And you did it in sort of a cheeky way, but sort of explain to me a little bit about the genesis of that, regardless of how much you were actually joking about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, forever since, I've been in the legal industry, I don't know, 25 years, something like that. And so from way before my time, law firms have been establishing annual rate agreements and negotiations with their clients year over year over year. And sometimes, as they did this over and over, they do it with more and more clients at times. They might lock it in for, 2 years or 3 years, or clients actually are looking to lock in rates. But regardless, every year, law firms have to go through this arduous process of negotiating annual rates with their clients. Nobody likes it. It's painful. It's not it's like no one wants to be part of that. It's not like a friendly thing. And I think it'd be great if it would go away, or if it could be sort of deprioritized.
What I want to do is you sort of went through the data on Pursuit. Before we dive into it real quick, give me a sense of sort of just the amount of data that we are dealing with on the Pursuit platform.
The data is certainly skewed toward large organizations. I think it's important for people to recognize that. Anyone who's familiar with Pursuit probably knows it, but in case you're less familiar, our clients on Pursuit are large Fortune 500s. We've got about 100 of those. There's some others as well, but that's the majority of them. They are putting matters of all shapes and sizes through Pursuit platform, sending out requests to firms who are submitting proposals to win those matters as new business. Those proposals include pricing information at the total price of the matter, at the phase level, say initial pleadings and or disclosures or discovery, things like that, as well as activities within each of those phases, like motion to dismiss or motion for summary judgment or deposition or tax due diligence for an M&A or something like that. And so we have now well over 10,000. I think we're over 12,000 matters. On average, there's 3 to 4 proposals per matter, so it's over 30,000 proposals. I don't know the count of number of phases or items, but I could look it up for you.
No, that's great. I just wanted to give people a sense of this is not a small sample size that we're dealing with. This is a lot of information, a lot of data points. And you uncovered something interesting about FinServ, which has been, let's say, historically sort of tight with their legal spending, you might say. But you
Sure.
found something interesting on the Pursuit with the Pursuit data.
Yeah. So what's been fun in the last couple of weeks is all that data has now been normalized. We've standardized it. We're using a taxonomy so that I can sort of explore it and look at some trends over time. FinServ is our deepest client sector, if you will. We have the largest number of our clients are from the FinServ space. And so just sort of looking closer at that, specifically because I came out of FinServ and I know for a fact that a lot of large banks and financial service organizations have locked their rates in for a very long time, well beyond the sort of typical 1 or 2 or 3 year duration that you see in some other areas. And it's because they have a ton of leverage, right? A law firm wants to say they work with insert, whatever large name bank you want to. But the truth is they don't actually like doing that work because they have to do it at typically what is the lowest rate they might otherwise do work for. And so I decided to focus on that and see, okay, does is that the same when we look at fixed fees or other sorts of non-hourly billable rate fee structures?
And what did you discover, right? Because what the genesis of this was hourly rates keep going up. But as you looked at it through sort of a fixed fee lens, what did you discover about the FinServ
Yeah, so
space?
there were a number of activities that we like to call sort of key cost drivers of a matter. Depositions or certain motions, things like that. Where, if you compare the trend in rates, and like, if you're in this industry, you've seen the sort of just steady increase in rates on 100 different line charts and 100 different articles. And it's like, okay, so it's the same thing. Does the same thing exist for an AFA, for a fixed fee? For some it does. For others, it certainly doesn't. We see it flatlining. And even still for others, it's actually gone down. And again, it's not, like you pointed out earlier, this is not a small sample size. So to me, that's super interesting, right? It really opens the door to say, okay, can a firm start to do more AFAs, maintain that profitability, maybe not spend 3, 4, 5, 6 months negotiating rates, or if they do, like, sort of don't care about it so much, if you're going to do enough work on which is on a fixed fee, which you can still, maintain that profitability. Like if that can become true, that can start to really change the industry, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, because the way you describe it, or the way it seems to exist up until now, right, is just that everybody's sort of grouchy, right? Law firms are grouchy because, to your point, they want the logo of the big financial firm, but they know that they're going to get locked into a low rate, so they're just like, "Grr," I don't want to grumble, grumble, grumble. And then at the same time, the financial institutions are like, oh, why do these rates keep going up every year? Why am I paying $1,000 for a first year associate? That doesn't make any sense, right? So sort of being able to shift this seems to maybe make everybody just a little bit happier.
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility for that. No one wants to do the rate negotiations. Clients want more predictability in pricing and budgeting. AFAs provide that, or they can provide it if they're done well. And potentially law firms can save a ton of headache while maintaining the sort of financial goals that they have.
Right. Now, as part of this, you also just dug into the numbers around AFA pricing, right? And you talked about this just a moment ago, just the idea of flatlining. But it started off, you said that sort of the pricing for AFAs, just as you looked at them on the Pursuit platform, sort of doubled between 2021 and 2023, but then have since sort of plateaued. Can you walk us through what do you think is happening with the AFAs and their pricing?
Yeah. And just to be clear, that's for a specific set of activities that I identified. So it may not be true across the board, but regardless, these are still very important key cost drivers in any sort of litigation. And look, look, all this is guessing. But something that does seem potentially quite logical is that, well, you got to think about, how does a typical law firm price an AFA? For the most part, largely it is just a simple calculation of multiplying the number of hours times the rate or the rates of the different people who are going to do the work. And then they say, okay, we did this kind of thing before. Let's look at a past matter. How many hours did it take? All right, let's take that. And what kind of different people did it? We had a paralegal here and a partner there and that sort of thing. And then they come to that number and, okay, here's the fixed fee for this deposition today, right, with new rates. If you haven't done this a lot, that's how you're going to do it if you're a law firm. And if you don't have enough data or someone else's data to look at, that's how you're going to have to do it again and again. But once you do this over and over, and you start to gain more access either to data that you have or third-party data, like Pursuit has potentially, you don't have to do it that way anymore. Right? You can say, hey, you know what? We can now look at a benchmark that says, hey, this is the range in price for this activity or this phase, for this type of client in this jurisdiction, and so on. And then you can get away from needing to do that same calculation of hours times rates. And then you can start to, think about things like, can we apply certain technologies or different process, or offload to a third-party provider, provide the same outcome. And again, now knowing what the going rate is for that fixed fee, you can determine if you can maintain that profitability.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like, what things seem to be, and you're the VP of data, so you would know this better than I, right? But the legal industry is sort of slow to change. and AFAs have been around for a while, but there's been just a slow adoption. But it seems like between sort of what you're uncovering and what we're seeing is that that's sort of starting to thaw. But what are you noticing just as you look at numbers and trends, just in sort of as we're at the halfway part of 2025?
So one thing I noticed for the first half of the year was we've seen a lot more what I'll call sort of really large matters, sort of the double XL size matters, and we've had plenty of those in the past. I don't think we've seen so many in 6 months previously, and from a lot of different organizations. Like we've always had sort of the large, big pharma IP patent litigation ones come through. But we've seen a sort of a certain increase in those, which to me is quite interesting. I mean, we've always had sort of matters of all shapes and sizes on Pursuit. We see, everything coming in on a daily basis. But to see so many kind of, break through our sort of upper limit of a ceiling in terms of how big these matters are in 6 months, to me, that was a bit of an outlier. Well, we'll see if it's an outlier. So I kind of anticipate seeing more of that for the rest of the year. It'll be interesting. Other than that, hard for me to say.
Well, all right. So what do we think about the role of technology in all of this, right? So everybody's talking about AI, that'll make things more efficient. That will help sort of decimate the idea of the billable hour when LLM can do it in something in a matter of seconds, right? How do you see that playing into sort of the trends that you're seeing or the numbers that you're seeing?
I'm sort of hopeful that we'll start to see certain activities or, pricing items, as we call them on Pursuit, but certain cost driving activities of a matter start to be handled more by AI or software or other technology. Which in theory, if you're going to continue to bill on the billable hour, you're going to lose out, right? Because now what took, 500 hours last year maybe only takes 5 minutes this year. But if you can sell the value of that and say, you know what, we're going to charge $25,000 for that no matter what, you client, don't worry about how we're doing it. You're going to get the same outcome. If you can sell that as a firm, I think then you can still, like I said, maintain your financial goals. And I think that's the sort of one more kick that AFAs need to start to take over more of the market share in terms of, how much of legal work is done on a billable hour versus not.
Okay, so to sort of recap, what we've noticed in what you're reporting, we'll just call it reporting, right? And not that you're out there the
Yeah,
gumshoe
I'm a
sort of
journalist now.
the journalist, yeah. But what you understood was that contrary to, at least on the Pursuit platform, contrary to conventional wisdom, FinServ actually is not sort of the least paying out sector on matters, and we see that sort of AFAs around a particular set of criteria, the pricing for those has flattened. So we've talked a lot, there's two sides to this equation, obviously. There's the firm side and the client side. What do you want people from the law firm side to take away from this data that you've uncovered? And what do you want people on the client side to take away from what you've uncovered?
I guess on the law firm side, to really take a long, hard look at the potential for AFAs to be your path to profitability in the future. It's been talked about forever. It's been, between 10 and 30% of the industry forever. Is now the time for that to start changing? Is there enough data and technology to move that? And I mean, that does apply to both sides. On the client side, right? If it's always been my belief that the reason there hasn't been more of a movement for AFAs is that clients haven't demanded it. And even when they do, they often fall back to hourly billing anyway. And so again, is now the right time to demand it and hold and stick to that demand on a more consistent basis.
Excellent. Well, Jordan, people can find your writing on our website at PERSUIT.com. I really thank you for being a guest here today. And if people wanted to get in touch with you or follow up more and chat about all things pricing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably just email me.
Okay.
Is that not the right answer?
Well, you can email them or connect with you on LinkedIn or whatever,
Yeah.
just we'll put your email and your contact information in the show notes. If you're at a party, be sure to corner Jordan Weinstein and ask him about legal pricing because he would love to chat with you. Jordan Weinstein, thank you for being on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.